that the surface temperature of Venus is 900 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than a baker's oven. Lead would be molten at that temperature. And when it rains sulfuric acid. And the pressure of the air is 100 times that of the Earth. It would crush you.
Making several groundbreaking discoveries, the Soviets were leading the space race. But amidst the victories and triumphs were several secrets and stories kept away from the public and other space rivals. These secrets were revealed by a Soviet astronaut just before his death. What are these many secrets, and how long have the Soviets kept them hidden? Also, how do they affect our knowledge of the cosmos? Join us in this video as we explore how a Soviet astronaut breaks silence before his death and reveals a terrifying secret. The world will remember the tales of the first man on the moon, Neil Armstrong, and the agency that made this dream possible, NASA. But while NASA may have been the first in the world to deploy a human onto the moon, they weren't the first to explore it. That crown goes to the Soviet Union. But beyond scoring a point in sending the first man-made object to the moon, the Soviet Union did another seemingly impossible feat. They were the first to send a man-made object into another planet's atmosphere. The planet in question is Venus. You see, the war for supremacy between the US and the Russians didn't just end with the Cold War. A new kind of race and rivalry broke out. Since both nations couldn't superimpose their dominance over the other, they decided to dominate something else: outer space. Both nations were determined to outshine each other in space exploration, and fierce competition began. Thanks to this competition, humanity has come so far in exploring the cosmos in just a few decades. The Soviet Union established the Soviet space program to do what other nations couldn't: explore space. With their vast financial resources, scientific knowledge, and labor power, the Soviet space program set many early records in space exploration. One such notable record is being the first to ever send a woman into space. The woman's name was Valentina Tereshkova, and this remarkable event occurred in 1963. The Soviet Union seemed to have had the greatest ambition to conquer space, given its early groundbreaking achievements. They were the ones to launch the world's first artificial satellite, Sputnik. They were also the first to send an animal into the Earth's orbit and back. Next, they set their sights on space objects like the Moon and the Earth's neighboring planet, Venus. The phenomenal milestone of landing a spacecraft on Venus occurred in the 1960s. The Venera mission aimed to gather as much information as possible about Venus. One thing that made the Venera mission very inspiring was that Venus has always been known for its harsh climate. The atmospheric pressure of Venus is about 92 times that of the Earth. And there's another problem of highly toxic gases like carbon dioxide and sulfur in the atmosphere. Thanks to all these gases trapped in the atmosphere, the heat on Venus is extremely high, even higher than Mercury, which is the closest planet to the Sun. While Mercury may be closer, its atmosphere isn't as dense as Venus. And so, while Mercury will dissipate any heat from the Sun, Venus traps all the heat. As a result, Venus is always extremely hot with temperatures of around 400 degrees Celsius, whether night or day, whereas Mercury cools to minus 173 degrees Celsius during nighttime. This and many more were the challenges the Soviet Union had to brace up for during the Venera mission. These same factors were probably why NASA didn't try to explore the planet Venus, instead focusing on the Moon and Jupiter. The Soviets' brave decision to explore Venus was faced with severe resistance initially, as the first two Venera missions in the early 1960s failed. Venera 3 was launched in 1965 but crashed on Venus without returning any data. But by 1967, the Venera 4 managed to touch down safely on the harsh world of Venus and sent back data to Soviet scientists. It was a truly breathtaking moment. Before that time, not much was known about Venus aside from the fact that thick, scary clouds covered it. Thanks to Venera 4, scientists learned that there is no oxygen or water in Venus's atmosphere, and it was mostly carbon-IV oxide. It also brought to light that there was no magnetic field over there on Venus. Overall, the Venera 4 probe spent about 90 minutes collecting data. Soon after, it melted under the unforgiving pressure and atmospheric conditions of Venus. You see pressures on Venus. In the years following Venera 4, they conducted 12 more Venera missions, which were all successful. Venera 5 and 6 was launched in January 1969, about 5 days apart. These later models of Venera spacecraft came with advanced modifications so they could withstand more pressure and collect more precise data. Thanks to these modifications, the Soviets collected a mountain of data about the mysterious planet. Venera 8 was able to take camera photo shots and clips of Venus, even amidst the terrible climate. But the most impressive of all was the Venera 9 to 12 space probes launched between 1975 and 1978. These weighed up to 11,000 pounds each, and their landers could take clear, accurate photo shots. However, photos of Venus exploration were kept secret by the Soviet Union, until a Soviet astronaut leaked them. Another thing the Soviets also kept secret was the details of the Mars exploration program. You see, the success of the Venera mission inspired the Russians to dig deeper into the cosmos, and so they set their sights on the Earth's sister planet, Mars. The Mars missions were a series of missions the Soviet space program launched between 1960 and 1973 to explore the Red Planet. The spacecraft for these missions was uncrewed, and they typically consisted of landers, orbiters, and flyby probes. The first launch in 1969 was a complete failure due to design and technical faults. Mars 2 and Mars 3 were identical spacecraft launched within days of each other. Mars 2 launched on May 19, 1971, having a total weight of about 4,000 kilograms. Mars 3 launched on May 28, 1971, weighing the same as Mars 2. These vessels were designed to cover the 200 million kilometer space between Mars and Earth. They had features like spherical landing capsules, conical braking shields, retro rockets, and parachute systems, and weighed 4,650 kilograms. These specs are not different from what we find in our space capsules today, but there is one thing the Russians did that is very similar to something we still use in space exploration today. You can say it's the Russians who brought the idea in the first place before other nations like the US and China followed. The invention of rovers. In a quest to conquer Mars, the Russians created the Prop-M rover. This genius space apparatus was designed to do the observation that an astronaut would have done if he were physically present. Shaped like a square and measuring about 5 kilograms, the rover was designed to navigate the Martian surface with ease, thanks to its special skis that provided a kind of hopping movement. It was a true work of ingenuity made to navigate the rugged terrains of Mars. The detection systems in this small masterpiece could detect any boulders or ditches ahead and avoid them completely. But the most interesting fact is that the Soviets could design this robot to function autonomously as far back as 1971. The Prop-M rover was the first robotic exploration device, but it wasn't wireless. A cable, about 15 meters long, connected it to the landing capsule. Thanks to the data relayed by this tiny robot, the Soviets got to learn all about the Martian soil's density, texture, strength, and more. They would have made much more discoveries if only the rover had lasted a little longer. But Prop-M only lasted for about 20 seconds. The Mars 2 spacecraft never made the landing but crashed woefully. It was all due to a malfunction in its systems. The Mars 3, on the other hand, stuck the landing perfectly, becoming the first man-made craft to pull off a successful soft landing on the moon. This was a phenomenal landmark for the Russians that once again put them in the lead in the epic space exploration race against their rival, the US. The Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions were edged in history as the pioneer missions to the Martian surface. The Mars 3, just like Mars 2, weighed around 4,650 kilograms. They comprised two main parts, an orbiter and a landing module. The main target of these space vessels was to observe Mars from orbit and also up close from its surface. From images to seismic data, the spacecraft was designed to get as much information as possible. and so it was pre-installed with various instruments like ultraviolet spectrometers, photocameras, infrared, and magnetometers. The ultraviolet spectrometers analyzed the atmosphere and soil on Mars, while the magnetometers gauged the intensity and direction of the magnetic field. The radiometers were responsible for collecting data on atmospheric pressure and water vapor levels. So, you see, the Mars 2 and 3 were very sophisticated vessels with technology way ahead of their time. These two spacecrafts have a special part called the lander, designed to survive the hard impact upon descent. The entire concept of the landing system was very fascinating. First, the landing sequence involved the deployment of a parachute specially tailored for the Martian atmosphere. Then, a set of retro rockets will be activated after a short while to further facilitate a gentle touchdown. But it wasn't long after the USSR's Mars 3 landed that it suddenly lost contact with the base. However, by now the USSR had gained a significant wealth of scientific knowledge and technological advancement. More so, they had tasted victory. And so, their ambitions were in no way deterred. Although the USSR's Martian missions may have been motivated by the desire to outshine the United States, there was also another agenda. You see, the Soviets were also seeking the answer to a great mystery, the mystery of aliens living on Mars. The Martian rover wasn't just equipped to observe and analyze soil and weather conditions. It was also equipped to look out for signs of biological life forms. The Mars 3 spacecraft transmitted the first ever live image from Mars, but it wasn't much to go by. All that could be seen in the image was a gray background. Detecting an alien or anything at all from such an image was practically impossible. Nonetheless, it was a remarkable breakthrough, and the Soviet Union was quite proud. But here's the shocking thing that happened after the Soviet Union's inspirational Martian landing. The secret was revealed by a Soviet astronaut. The Mars 3 went silent after about 15 seconds of beginning its data transmission back to Earth. No one knows what caused the sudden break in transmission, but the device never came back on. And that was how what would have been a splendid mission came to an abrupt end. So many theories have been speculated to cause this sudden break in transmission. Some have said it was because of the Martian dust storm on the surface. But some other groups believe that a Martian entity must have done something to make the Mars 3 fail. In other words, aliens may have been responsible for this great mishap. The loss of transmission was a bad turn of events. Since there was no way to communicate, the scientists at the base had no way to discern the fate of Mars 3 or its rover. You see, the Prop M rover was meant to be manipulated by the specialized arm of the Mars 3 spacecraft it was tethered to. It was also designed so that it could only move in the field of view of the cameras installed on Mars 3. Ideally, this rover should have stopped to take measurements at every 5 feet distance covered. But sadly, it never got a chance to explore a large area of the Martian surface. Just so you know, the Soviets never mentioned the Prop M rovers in the official reports. In fact, they kept it a secret for over 20 years. It was later, in 1990, that this secret was leaked, and the whole world got to know that these little robots were deployed on Mars. Sources also reveal that the Mars 6 and Mars 7 spacecraft also had rovers. All of this makes you wonder if there are more details the Soviets kept secret from the rest of the world. Perhaps some otherworldly creatures? Or maybe a Martian. Certainly, the Martian landscape has always held several features and phenomenon that has intrigued astronomers for decades. One such phenomenon is the epic dust storms that seem to come out of nowhere and sweep the landscape. Sometimes such dust storms can last for weeks. When this happens, the red planet no longer looks like a lifeless red ball of wonder, but a blurry, raging amber sphere. Mars's topography and atmospheric conditions greatly facilitate the formation of these dust storms, and the emptiness of the landscape makes it all the more proficient. Just before the Mars 3 rover went radio silent, the last thing the cameras picked up was a gray background. This is why most experts and scientists in the Soviet Union believe that a dust storm must have engulfed Mars 3 and brought it to its early demise. You see, space exploration is always filled with uncertainties. Even after mapping out the entire voyage and putting everything in place to ensure a successful mission, there's no guarantee things will go as planned. Take Mars 2, for instance. It had everything it needed to make a successful landing, but the rocket systems failed to engage at the last minute, leading to an epic crash. Even during the famous Apollo mission, something similar played out when the lunar module failed to make a clean landing. If not for the quick thinking of Neil Armstrong to take manual control of the vessel, the Apollo mission may have ended tragically for the two men. Such are the dangers of space exploration. But the silver lining to events like these is that they give the scientific community an opportunity to learn and evolve technologically. When space mishaps occur, scientists investigate to find out what went wrong, and then brainstorm to find out how to fix the problem. This is how space exploration technology has evolved over the years. After the Mars 3 mishap, the Soviet Union did everything it could during the subsequent missions to prevent such an event. By the years 2000 to 2010, technological capabilities for space exploration had advanced greatly. This fostered a new desire among American scientists to launch their Mars mission. And so, by 2005, NASA launched the MRO, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, to explore Mars. This tool was armed with new-age instruments like a high-resolution camera so sharp that it could capture even the smallest objects on the Martian surface. The space probe slowly orbited Mars, and one of its main goals was to find traces of the Mars 3 spacecraft that had landed there decades earlier, in 1971. And so, armed with the images and data from the Mars 3 transmission, American scientists tried to map out the landing coordinates of Mars 3. They began their search, trying to leave no stone unturned. It was a long and hard search. Also, several decades had passed. There was a fair chance that the debris from Mars, the 3rd of May, have been buried under dust or swept away by the raging storms on the planet. But imagine the surprise when the MRO captured some interesting photos showing debris and objects that looked like wrecked spaceship parts. One very recognizable item in the photos was the parachute. It's still amazing how it was able to survive after all these years. Just beside the parachute lay a circular metal object which many experts speculated could be the Mars 3 lander, and they also found a dark area nearby which was suspected to be the landing point. However, even with all the information in these images, researchers couldn't determine what must have caused Mars 3 to shut down unexpectedly. Still, all this was soundproof that the Soviets' Mars mission wasn't a hoax, and they really succeeded. And so, the United States NASA helped prove the authenticity of the Soviet Union's feat. Being age-long rivals with the Russians, you'd think that this would foster another space rivalry. But rather, it prompted a partnership, the creation of something new, the International Space Station. But something shocking happened in 2020 when a Soviet astronaut shared UFO footage with the rest of the world on social media. The Russian astronaut, or as they're commonly called, cosmonaut, was orbiting Earth at the ISS. The cosmonaut was recording a video of the Earth's southern lights, a beautiful space phenomenon that astronomers fondly call the aurora australis. The aurora australis is simply the southern lights you see in the night sky from Earth. It occurs in places like Australia, Antarctica, Chile, Argentina, and New Zealand. The display always seems magical, with a mixture of green and other rainbow-colored lights dancing in the night sky. From space, these lights can still be seen, appearing as some sort of crown sitting above the Earth. This cosmonaut, who goes by the name Ivan Wanger, was having a field day, enjoying the auroras, until he spotted something else moving in a unique formation. In the video, you see the curved edge of the Earth, several stars in the background, and the not-too-visible auroras. But looking closely to the left, you find a group of 4 or 5 objects with bright lights gliding slowly over the Earth at equal distances from each other. The brief video only lasted about 1 minute, but the man who posted it explained that he shot it in a time lapse. In real time, these objects actually lasted for about 52 seconds. The strange video quickly gained attention on social media, with a major population of people supporting the cosmonaut in his belief that they were, in fact, UFOs. The mysterious appearance and disappearance of the objects and their unique formation are quite similar to several of our experiences with UFOs over the years. However, the International Space Station never commented on this issue. In fact, They haven't mentioned the video since 2020, despite Ivan Wanger submitting it to them for analysis. And so, once again, we are left with a space mystery in our hands and no forthcoming answers. Scenarios like these make you wonder how much these space exploration agencies know that the rest of the public does not. For a long time, we've seen agencies like NASA come under heat and allegations from whistleblowers about certain leaked info on aliens and UFOs. But it seems other space agencies are also in on keeping secrets about the cosmos away from the public. Soviet exploration missions on Venus and Mars yielded so much data and information about these planets. And yet, as revealed by a Soviet astronaut, not all of this data has been shared with the public. During the last Venera mission in 1982, the Venera 13 managed to take clear, high-quality photos of Venus, and also gathered a lot of other data from the landscape. It even detected traces of organic molecules on the surface, hinting that biological life forms may be present on the planet. This makes you wonder, could there be aliens on Venus? And did the Soviets by chance encounter them during one of these missions? For now, we may not know the answers, but hopefully, in the near future, every truth about these space agency missions will be revealed, whether officially or unofficially. Thank you for watching another episode of Voyager. While you are still here, click on the video on your screen to see more mind-blowing videos like this one.